Okay, so now let us begin with the text of the poem. That is Elegy written in a country churchyard. As we have already seen that there are 32 different stanzas, and in each stanza you will find there are 4 lines. Okay, so if you try to find the rhyme scheme, then you will find that it is AB format. It is written in AB format. The text begins, as I've already suggested, that is an elegy written in a country churchyard. So the country churchyard is at the primary focus of this poem. What the poet is actually focusing on. It is a kind of a descriptive poem. It is somehow discussing about the country churchyard and how the evening is settling down, and then the night section, and then the morning, and then you will get the churchyard where there is a cemetery, there is a graveyard actually. What happens there? So let us begin with the first stanza. The very famous lines, you see. It begins with, "The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing hard wind slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me." So the text begins with the reference to a curfew. So you see that who does the term actually signify? Why does Gray is starting his poem with this particular term, curfew? Whenever there is a curfew, you see, there is a kind of a bell ringing. It says, "The curfew tolls the knell of parting day." It is not a typical England that he is trying to describe here. Whenever we get that England is being described, always we find that these have been described with its enormous noise and crowd and chaos. Okay, so somehow, as I've already suggested, that these poems are to some extent they are discussing on something alternative. It is the alternative world. So whenever there is a reference to curfew, you have to identify that curfew brings to some extent, the noiseless conditions, where there is lack of people, where there is, you see, the completely being the vacant places. It is completely the evacuations being made because the people are not present here. So the curfew, and whenever the curfew is settling, there is a knell is being, you see what it says, "The curfew tolls the knell of parting day." So somehow the parting, this very term, parting day, the day's parting means it is at the end, it is gradually moving towards the darkness. That actually signifies the evening time. So day is parting, that's why the day is imagined as dying, and curfew as ringing the funeral bell, right? So somehow, as I've already suggested, it's an elegy. So elegy signifies a poem that deals with a loss, okay, a kind of lament. It obviously associates something related to any kind of a death, where people are dying, the people are passing away. That's why the term parting, it is not simply referring to the parting day, rather it is also referring to the parting of the men. The people are dying, the people are dead. And with the reference to curfew, and whenever curfew is settling, you will find that a kind of an alarm, a kind of a bell is being rung. So this particular bell, that is why the term like tolls means rings. The curfew rings the knell. Okay, and this knell, this very term, knell is the ringing of the bell at the graveyard. You see that when at the cemetery that is nearby the churches, you see that when a body, that is the coffin, is being placed at the grave, then the knell is being sounded, as we see. Probably you have remembered you have in your mind the reference to Nell in Macbeth. Okay, it's very famous. So the curfew tolls the knell of parting day. So that's why here is the reference of knell, because knell is related to the death, and death is related to the cemetery. The cemetery is related to the churchyard, that is the country churchyard. And obviously the parting day, this parting term, the term parting, it is not simply referring to the day, it is obviously referring to the day, but along with it, it is also has its close association with the people, with the men who have already parted with, you see. So the curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing hard wind slowly o'er the lea. So it's a description. The evening is settling down. The lowing hard wind slowly o'er the lea. The lowing hard wind, you see that it's a reference to the mooing cattle. Okay, and they are moving in a zigzag way. That's why the wind has been mentioned here. As the wind is slowly passing through the lea, likewise the lowing herd of what? Herd of sheep, herd of cows. Okay, so they are also moving in the same direction, in a zigzag way, they're passing. So that is the general observation, that is a general kind of a description that actually happens at the evening. When the evening settles down, you will find that the lowing herd of cattle, they are gradually coming from their grazing fields, you see. So the curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing herd winds slowly, the lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea, that is moving in a zigzag way over the lea, that is the valley probably. And what happens there? The ploughman homeward plods his weary way. So these are some kind of, the images that he is creating, that is the poet is creating. There is the reference to the ploughman. What he does here, the ploughman is coming towards their home. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way. It's a marvelous and it's a wonderful expression that he is trying to create here. Weary way. Can you imagine that? How a way can be weary? Is it simply referring to the way that is weary, or the ploughman is weary? So it's a kind of a figure of speech, you see, that in অলংকার যেটা বাংলায় বলি আমরা, in a figure of speech that is in the rhetorical device, it is called hyperlage. Yes, it is called the transferred epithet. It is called hyperlage, and it is actually means transferred epithet, where the epithet means the adjective. You see here in this particular term, weary way, the epithet is weary. And what it suggests, the way it cannot be weary, rather it is actually referring to the condition of the ploughman. Actually the ploughman is weary. Okay, and what happens here, that when he is coming towards home by plodding, you see, and when he is coming homeward, his condition, that is his present state, is being transferred to the present condition of the way, and that's why the term weary is being placed before the way, but literally it is signifying the condition of the ploughman. Why? Because the evening is settling down. So after the busy day, you see that the ploughman, what actually happens in the countryside, the ploughmen are very much busy by tilling the earth, by doing the grazing the cattle and doing the farming and agricultural activities. So he is returning in a sleepy condition. So that's why it is another kind of image that he is trying to create here. So the curfew tolls the knell of parting day, the lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea, the ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. So that is the expression of a great poet. And leaves the world to darkness and to me. What does it mean? Leaves the world to darkness means, that means it is completely, when darkness comes, you see, that when night it settles, it cannot remain visible to others. Just like the sea, or the description that the poet is trying to suggest here, the description of the countryside, it remains invisible to the eye of the age-old poets, you see, the neoclassical poets. Such kind of descriptions are completely missing from the neoclassical literature. And these are the authors who are, for the first time, they are using such kind of writings. I'm not suggesting that before neoclassical period there were not these kinds of poems, because Shakespeare was there. Because there are other Elizabethan writers who are actually dealing with such kind of beautiful images and beautiful descriptions of the landscape. That is the landscaping details and the villages and the village landscapes and so. What happens, during the long time, that is after 1640s, okay, such beautiful descriptions are completely missed out from literature. And here there are Gray and other poets who are again reviving the same ethos, the same temperament that the Elizabethans tried to portray in their writings. And that's why leaves the world to darkness and to me. Okay, who is this me? The poet, the speaker of this poem. Because darkness and me, these are to some extent considered to be synonymous here. Because it remains invisible to others and it becomes, it's happening to me and I can foresee them, I can interpret them, I can reuse them in the form of my poetry. That is the fundamental thing, that is the fundamental ideology that I am trying to suggest here. So it is the first section where you can find to me actually signifies the poet, because in the lonely churchyard, apart from the poet, no other person is present. And from that churchyard, the poet is looking at the scenes, looking at the landscapes. And here he is trying to note all these down. So it is the first stanza. So again I'm reading. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd wings slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me, because I am alone. Apart from me, there are no other person in this place. You see, I am not a neoclassical writer. That's what he's suggesting here. In the second stanza, that is the stanza 2, what he says, now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. These are the worlds of images, you see. What are the basic patterns of images? You know all these things, because whenever we are thinking of images, as I've already suggested, that there are different kinds of images. You see that there are, number one, it is the visual images. As you know, the term image is actually referring to the visual forms. But apart from the visual images, there are other things. For example, say there are auditory images. As you know, it's something related to the ears. There are olfactory images that are related to the smell. There are gustatory images related to the tastes. There are tactile images related to the touch. There are thermal images related to the temperature. It is obviously related to the touch, obviously. And obviously there is another thing that is called the kinesthetic images. What is kinesthetic images? Is the sensation of movement. Now, as it has been suggested at the very beginning, that is in the past stanza, that evening is settling down, it is gradually getting darkness. So whenever there is the reference to the darkness, it actually indicates that the sense of sight, you see, the sense of looking at something, it got cancelled. And when your sense of seeing into something, looking into something, it gets cancelled, it signifies that your other senses become far more active. And that's why the poet is scientifically, he is referring to the other sections. That means when the ears get more powerful, you see, and that's why the images are considered in terms of auditory senses. Auditory, obviously, what it says, now fades the glimmering landscape on the side. That is, gradually it is becoming dark. The glimmering landscape, you see, what it suggests, that with the gradual settling of evening, the glimmering landscape that seems to be visible with the sunlight, which was on the side, it is gradually fading because it is the darkness that is settling, right? And all the air a solemn stillness holds. Again, another term. You see that here is a term like solemn. Okay, this is a term that is taken from somehow. It is the register of theology, because the term solemn is related to something spiritual. It is something religious, right? And what it says, solemn stillness. What is solemn stillness? Because the solemnity that it gradually gathers, it has to be related with the cathedral. It has to be related with the place where religion is being practiced. So what it says, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, as if everything got still. Why? The movement has been ceased. Why? Because it is completely lonely. Why? Because the life is missing here. Why? Because it is the country churchyard, because there is a cemetery, because the people are dying, and obviously the dead bodies are taken to the graves. So you cannot expect much movement in a country churchyard. And that's why the air and all the air a solemn stillness holds. The air ceases. A kind of a stillness is being perceptible. Except this, the save, okay, the first word of the third line in the second stanza is save, and this save literally means except. That means everything got still except where the beetle wheels its drawing flight. Okay, you see, it's another onomatopoeic sounds. You know what is onomatopoeia, where when the words are actually duplicating the sounds. Okay, droning flight. You see, it's the humming sound. The beetle wheels as if it is the movement is at the focus. So except where the beetle, you know, Beatle, the famous Beatles, the music. Okay, so where the beetle wheels his droning flight, it's gradually moving. And why it is called the droning flight? Because while it was flying, the humming sound can be audibly, it comes to you. So it is the auditory sound, and it is the auditory image that Gray is trying to create here. So that's why it says that now fades the glimmering landscape on the side, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, except where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Again the term. You see the folds, actually it is referring to the folds of ships, you see. The bell rings of the ships, that is being referred in terms of the term tinkling, because you see that what happens that from the neck of the ships there are the bells, and whenever the ship moves, the tinkling of the bell becomes audible. They are moving in a drowsy way. Why? Because the night has already settled, and drowsy tinklings lull, as if it is lull. Lulled means again that the condition of sleep is being considered. Lull the distant folds. Folds of what? Folds of ships. The ships have not been mentioned here. It is another figure of speech that is called metonymy. Why? Because here a container has been mentioned, but the thing contained, that the ships have been referred to. Okay, metonymy is a figure of speech where it is called one thing is named and another thing is meant. একটা জিনিস বলা হবে এবং অন্য একটা জিনিসকে বোঝানো হবে। এখানে কি হচ্ছে, কন্টেইনারটাকে বলা হচ্ছে এবং থিক কন্টেইন যেটা ভেতরে যেটা আছে, ফোল্ডটা হচ্ছে কন্টেইনার, তার মধ্যে যেগুলো আছে শিপস, সেগুলোকে এখানে বোঝানো হচ্ছে। So that's why it's another kind of a descriptive images that have been taken into consideration in this particular section. What it says, now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. So Primarily, as we have already suggested, that in the first two stanzas, again in the next few stanzas we'll also get the same, the descriptive notions are always in work, right? So here you can find, as I've already suggested, that with the gradual negation of the visible perspectives, you can find the other things, that is the sound level, it gets active. So it is in the first two stanzas, and there ends the second chunk. Okay.